question, why do you need an MBA, right? You want to figure out, are you doing an MBA because your career needs it? Or are you doing an MBA because you've come to a point where you've got stuck in your career? Or are you doing it for some other purpose because you want to get into a different field or you want exposure? So it really depends on what you're looking for in an MBA. And it's very, 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 I'll stress this. I mean, the amount of varies is not enough to say it's extremely important that you figure out that why and match your college according to that. For example, I write this in my blog as well. For example, you cannot attend, a black tie party in a bikini or a bikini party in a black tie because you're a mismatch. Then you go there and you're like, oh my God, I'm not. This is not what I wanted. MBA is some. Is an MBA is an optional education, right? You take up an MBA after a few years of experience, and it's not a mandatory education at all. So when you're going to invest your time and money into this endeavor, you better be clear why you're doing this MBA, how it's going to help you. And the way you do this is you start thinking, what are you going to do after your MBA? Most people, they focus so much on getting into the MBA and not so much on what they're going to do after. So I think you should spend a good amount of time thinking what are you going to achieve after the MBA, and then you'll be able to connect the dots. And for example, if you are going into finance, let's say, pick up the best finance course in the world there is, right? If you're going into entrepreneurship, which happened in my case, pick up the best entrepreneurship course there is in the world, and then you can decide whether you can afford it, whether there's scholarship, whether it's in the geographic location you want, because all that is, it's just like marriage. You you want to find the kind of person who's a perfect match for you. So look for that match with what you want to do, and start with the process. Why do I need an MBA? What am I going to do after the MBA? So that's what I'm going to dial back a bit and tell you the story of how INSEAD happened to me. It is not the conventional story one might want to hear, but I'm going to tell you the truth. So I should start with blaming my manager to begin with. So I was working at Novell, and I was working in file systems, Linux and Unix file systems. And I was doing engineering work there, and it was fantastic work. It was, you cannot ask for better kind of experience when you're a computer science engineer. And there came a point in his situation where he had to promote people, and we being file system engineers, we did not want to give up that engineering aspect. We were too proud of ourselves, and he wanted to promote 2 or 3 people into the management category. And all of us at that time, I must say, looked at managers are like, these people don't know much in life. We are the ones who save the world, kind of a feeling, because we were like doing a lot of very good engineering work. And he promoted, because he had budget, he sent me to a management training. And I was at that time, oh my God, I've got selected to a management training. I cannot like show my face to people. It was that bad, right? But I went through the training, and then he gave me a project. I'm like, you are killing me. You cannot do this to me. But I took up the project because, and then I realized that it was not that bad, right? And I did well, and he gave me, initially it was like 4 or 5 people, and within a couple of months he gave me 60 people. It so happened at that time, and I was able to manage that. And it so happened at that time that my counterpart in the US was let go. They were chopping down, reorganizing, and within a span of 8 months I had 130 people in 5 countries that I had to manage. So it was a huge responsibility. I was doing 18 hours a day, but I was really learning a lot. And for me, it opened up a door where I realized that what I had known about projects and all of that, and there was this whole new world of management that was so intriguing, so interesting. And I started reading books as to basically I always want to be good at what I do, and I started reading books and management, the best management books there are, and all of that. And I also started going to these meetings called PMI meetings in Bangalore, and I was trying to understand how does this work, and I met people who were managing shipping yards, managing airline industry, and all kinds of. And then the success of that, managing that 130 people got a bit to my head, and I was like, if I can manage this, what else can I manage possibly? Why should I work in the IT industry? Why cannot I go manage something else? That's we'll keep that as scene one, that scene one story. Other part that was happening at that time in my life was I don't know, like you have Kamala Harris today, who's the vice president. At that time, there was this man called Al Gore, and he won Nobel Prize for sustainability. And in my spare time, I used to be reading all these about sustainability, and I got very, very interested and intrigued. And I was thinking, like, you cannot just give one man a prize. It's not like a peace prize where just one person gets it. Sustainability is like the whole globe. Everybody needs to participate. And I was like, the problem seemed complex, and I was thinking that they're not going in the right direction. And to be able to make sustainable products, to be able to get people to move to sustainability, to have the planet better, you need to create sustainable products. So I started reading about that. So that's the scene two, right? So, and till now, there's no MBA in my mind at all. I had not even heard of INSEAD at that time. So I've got all these questions, and then I speak to people, and they tell me that you could possibly do an MBA. And so I'm like, what's an MBA? What do people do after an MBA? And one thing led to the other, and I said, okay. At that time I was 29, which is a higher age for an MBA course. And I, like always, I said, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to probably apply to the best school there is, best entrepreneurship course there is, and I'm going to see how it goes. If it doesn't happen, I'm going to invest the same amount of money in starting a business. And at that time, online retail was something that I was looking at. With no experience in business. So I said, I'm going to take it step by step. Probably I'm too old for the MBA bit. I spoke to a few people, and I remember in Koramangala, there was a group where people would meet up. We used to use Yahoo groups at that time, Yahoo groups and Google groups, and not Facebook groups like we do, or WhatsApp like we do today. And I said, because I knew I wouldn't be able to sit and study for my GMAT alone. And ages since it was all like calculator and Excel sheets, and ages since I did some mental math. So I said, I need to go and figure out how to crack the GMAT. And there were four of us who said, okay, we'll study together. By week two of them left. And by third week, I was stuck with one Punjabi guy who, we used to meet up in my house. And I used to get up late on the weekend. We used to practice only on the weekends. And I would get up at 9, and he would come from the market with fish or chicken, saying, we're going to cook this at 12. And so the 3 hours, that's all I used to practice. And in 6 weeks, we wrote our GMAT, and I got a 720. I was like, okay, this is good enough for, the top MBAs. Let me apply. So I was thinking of Harvard or INSEAD. And that's when he was the one who told me about INSEAD, because he had been to the INSEAD campus. He said, Rashmi, if you're applying, you need to apply to either INSEAD. And I was thinking more about Harvard. And so that's when I started digging, and I got through this blog at that time written by an INSEAD alum, which got me very excited. Then I spoke with him, and he gave me a lot of insight about how the school was. And then I just knew that this is where I need to go. So that kind of answers why INSEAD and how I got into it, because I was looking at entrepreneurship, starting a company. I was looking at sustainability. So I was very clear in my mind what I wanted, but it didn't come off like, just like that one day. I'm just going to elaborate what happened at that time. So I knew that I was going to get out of my job, right? It had sunk into me I was restless. I knew that there had to be the next step. Either I'm going to quit and start my own company, or I'm going to go to INSEAD and study entrepreneurship and start a company. So that was set in my head. So at that, I was single at that time. I had a house in Koramangala. What I did is I one fine day decided I'm getting too lazy, because writing the essay was very, very difficult for me. INSEAD kind of spoiled my head with that question, why INSEAD, right? So I had to think deep, and I was like, why do I even want to do an MBA? My father would tell me, like, you're doing well, you've got a great job, you've got a great position. I was like I told you, I was the youngest person who was handling 130 people team at that time. And like everybody around me told me, why do you want to go? Even my manager, I told him I'm applying, and he was like, take a sabbatical, don't leave. So nobody encouraged me to leave at that time. And I was like, this is not going to happen unless I push myself and write those essays. Writing the essays was the most difficult part. So what I did at that time, I locked up my house. I was on rent. I gave back the house, and I moved to a paying guest, made myself as uncomfortable as possible. I gave away my belongings all to my sister and brother, and I was in 2 suitcases, and I was like, if I'm going to make it happen, I have to make it happen. And in 2 months, it took me 2 months to write. It took me about 6 weeks to write GMAT, but 2 months to write the essays. And every evening, I was still working 18-hour days with that 130 people team, but I would come in the night and I would sit down and I would keep asking myself these questions. Why do I want to do an MBA? What is it? So piece by piece, it started coming together. I must have written about 20, 30 drafts, not of the final essay, but why I was trying to do an MBA and what I would do after the MBA. And I think that was a very good spiritual exercise as well, in a way. And yeah, so I applied. I had no hope at that time, in the sense I was not looking at I was giving it a shot, kind of. It was a third round. I applied, but my essay was very genuine. It was coming from a place of a lot of thinking, and there was a perfect match with the school, and I got an admit. And then, anyway, I was ready because I had given up my house and everything. I was in 2 suitcases, so I was like, okay, here I come. And that was it. That's my INSEAD story. That like I said, it may not be the conventional, because there are people, for example, who come to INSEAD whose parents have been to INSEAD, right? And they've been groomed to get into INSEAD from a young age, perhaps. So everybody's story is different, but this is my story. There are now there are 4 campuses, but at the time there were only 2 campuses, Singapore and Fontainebleau, and each of them have different characteristics. And during the year, you're allowed to shift between any campuses any number of times you want, provided there are enough seats and you apply for all those logistics, right? So to answer your day at INSEAD, there is no morning, evening, night concept, because you are trying to do 2 years of MBA, which other people take 2 years, because you're at par with Harvard or any other institute you talk about, which they take Wharton or anywhere. They take 2 years, and you do that in 1 year. 2 years MBA is intense, and you have to prioritize your day, what you're going to do, and you have a lot of partying that happens in during your course as well, and which you don't want to miss. Rightly so, because it's of immense value as well, because that's where you forge your relationship, that's how you grow your network. So every bit that INSEAD designs is when you're going through, the year goes like that. But like I said, sometimes I attend events organized by INSEAD where we speak to students, and I tell them that even after a decade of passing from INSEAD, I still find some of those things that I've learned come to life now. I'm like, oh, this is what they meant, kind of, so it gets better and better every year that passes by. So a day at INSEAD is chaotic in its own way, but you will find a rhythm. You will figure out what's important to you. For example, for me, it was important that I take all the entrepreneurship courses. For example, I took a course called Building Businesses in China in the middle of the term, and I went to China and we spoke to some of the best entrepreneurs out there. So it depends. While you're doing that, you might miss on something else, but you've got to figure out what it is. I don't know if it's answering your question. How is a day at for a student? But I'm